These pictures are the first of Israeli troops in Gaza, but were subject to Israeli military censorship. Just one cameraman taken on patrol in Gaza's dangerous alleyways. The streets are deserted. Damage to what appears to be civilian property is significant. Palestinians living in the area seem frightened. One man appeals for help, saying, "We've been stuck in the house for 5 days and need food and baby milk." The video comes as a mounting civilian death toll builds pressure on Israel to show how its ground offensive is being fought.
We definitely don't enjoy. You don't enjoy to see houses that are ruined. But we have to remember that the Palestinians, they chose the Hamas. And Hamas is a terror organizations, and this is exactly what they got.
Hamas, which is
Israel also succumbed to international pressure, agreeing to a shaky and only partially observed 3-hour ceasefire, allowing the first aid convoys into Gaza since the ground incursion began 4 days ago. More than 100 food and medical supply trucks were allowed through. The UN says it needs 500 trucks daily.
We are feeding 750,000 people on a permanent basis. More than 3 hours a day is needed for that.
Just minutes after the lull, the fighting began again. Israel says it's committed to more supplies getting through, but
we know that Hamas can try to exploit this sort of procedure for their own military purposes, and we won't allow that to happen. That's why the way this mechanism will work will be fluid. We won't do it exactly in the same way when we do it next time.
As destruction continues, diplomacy gets a hearing. Several proposals are on the table, none making much headway yet. This seems to want an end, or at least another lull.
We need any ceasefire, actually, either through the Egyptian, the United Nations, France, or anybody, because the humanitarian crisis is very huge.
It's not just humanitarian pressure Hamas is feeling. Israeli troops say they have captured dozens of Hamas fighters and killed over 100 more.
Nick, I understand you've seen an uptick in activity over your right behind you in the last hour.
An operation just seems to have started there, Anderson. We're seeing a lot of tracer fire, hearing a lot of small arms fire, a lot of heavy machine gun fire, and also quite a lot of explosions. It really is much busier down there. The fight really seems to be pushing into the houses around Beit Hanun and the Jabalia refugee camp at the northern end of the Gaza Strip here, Anderson.
What do we know now about this Israeli strike yesterday on the UN school? Are there any new details?
There are. The UN has had what it describes as a preliminary investigation. They say they've worked with local community leaders around the school, and they say that they're now 99% confident that there were no Hamas fighters in the school. And the Israeli Defense Forces also say that they've now had an investigation. Of course, what happened there, more than 40 people were killed. There were 400 refugees in this school that the UN had designated as a safe place for them to stay during the fighting. Several Israeli artillery shells hit the school, and the Israeli Defense Forces have said that they were firing, their troops were firing those rounds in response to Hamas being at the school. In fact, 2 named Hamas fighters at the school firing their mortars at the troops. But what the Israeli Defense Forces now say they have gathered during their investigation is that the Hamas fighters were not actually inside the school compound, but they say very, very close to it and adjacent to it. Anderson?
Nick, it sounds like we're listening to an unmanned drone fly over you at this point. That's what the sound is, I think. The ground operation is at a critical juncture. Gaza's divided. Gaza City is surrounded. They haven't really moved directly into urban centers in a sustained way. Are they going to do that? That would be a big change, a big new step.
You're absolutely right. That is a drone flying over there. There are several, and they seem to be supporting those troops who seem to be doing exactly that, which is pushing into this urban environment. What we have seen in this first video that the Israeli Defense Forces have allowed an international journalist to go and film with them does seem to be them in some of the sort of urban environments, and that this operation right now where all the gunfire is going on, that's an area of housing, so they do seem to be pushing in, and that has a lot of dangers. The dangers of getting caught up in alleyways that are much more familiar to the Hamas fighters down there. But what we've seen on the video is that the streets are widely deserted. But again, in this situation, potential for civilian casualties, and that's what seems to be going on, that push into the built-up areas there, Anderson.
All right, Nick Robertson on the border. Nick, thanks very much. We're going to check in with Chief International Correspondent Christiana Amanpour later on in this broadcast. The Mideast crisis going to land on President-elect Obama's plate